Hey, real estate rock stars. I'm excited about this interview. We get to talk to Ryan Lundquist today. I think I'm saying his name right. He's going to correct me if I didn't. I'm out in Sacramento. I'm at the ROG Talks conference. But the fun part about it, Ryan just got off stage talking about things. But the reason I was excited to interview Ryan is today was like a blast from the past. So 10 years ago when we were doing a ton of volume out in Sacramento, there were a lot of emails and data and things like that going back and forth with him as an appraiser. And we're going to talk, I don't really know what we're going to talk about yet. We might talk about life. We might talk about real estate data in the market, but we're going to have some fun. Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, good. Yeah, I'm definitely sweating, just got off stage. And so I would say sweating like a pig. These pigs really sweat, though. I think that's the deep philosophical question. I don't know, like we're going to have to chat GPT that.
Do pigs really sweat? That should be on a shirt, actually. Because there's a lot of those little sayings that you can put on a shirt of what happens in the woods and everything else. But do pigs really sweat? I don't really know.
I don't know. I'll find out.
Yeah. How long you lived in Sacramento?
For 22, 23 years.
Yeah. How did you get into becoming an appraiser?
Well, by accident. Most people in real estate, knew someone. And for me, I was formerly teaching at a private school.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife got pregnant and needed to make more money. I need some appraisers. And it's as simple as that, saying, hey, guys, would you train me? And they said yes, and haven't looked back.
Yeah. How's this year been for because I guess maybe the last few years. And what do I really mean by that? Appraisers, I think, are busy during refinance times if transactions aren't happening, or they're busy during high sales times.
Yeah.
It's also kind of limited. Like some people always choose the same appraiser. So it's kind of like you've been in the business a long time. So has your business been affected in a negative way, cash flow wise, the last few years?
So I have a little bit of a unique situation because I only do private appraisals now. I diversify away from loan work because it's contingent on rates. And right now, I think that there's a lot of struggle in real estate as a whole. I mean, you can't be missing 35% or so of the normal number of sales and not feel that in the wallet. And so I've tried to insulate my business from something that's, less reflective of what rates are doing. And so, because you're right, yeah, rates go down, appraisers get really busy with refis, volume's better, and then agents and appraisers are both feeling that. But if I'm just doing private appraisals for divorce or estate or whatever, that can kind of exist in any sort of market, which is the goal for me.
I was going to ask, what is a private appraisal?
Just a evaluation. It might be for a divorce. There's some litigation. Different people have reasons for, it could be tax or, what's the value before we list? A lot of different things. Or you're buying it privately from an owner. You want an appraiser to establish the value. And so remove.
So essentially, it's any appraisal that a bank isn't requiring.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. I guess I knew that was kind of a business.
Yeah.
But didn't really think, so do you charge more on private appraisals than a bank appraisal?
I don't really know what bank appraisers are getting. I'm assuming that my fee might be a little higher. But the complicated thing with bank appraisers is that you have your middleman company, the appraisal management company, skimming off the top.
Yeah.
And so I'd say I'm probably getting more just because of that alone, because there's no one, skimming off the top who's, ordered the appraisal.
How did you build your business to where people knew to reach out to you for private appraisal? So somebody's getting a divorce and they're like, okay, we need to get an appraisal on this. How did people know to call you?
Well, 16 years ago, I started a blog.
Yeah.
And, and sort of the rest is history. And I used to post way too much, like 4 or 5 times a week. Like you did.
What was the blog called?
A Sacramento appraisal blog.
Yeah, that was it. I used to read it.
Yeah. And so I write once a week now, and my posts are probably too long, but they're sort of packaged in a way to sort of digest content quickly with headlines. And so, I'm just writing about stuff I find interesting. A lot of it's about the market right now. When COVID happened, I think things got really interesting. And so I'm just fascinated. I have an insatiable appetite for data and for telling the story of the market, finding language. And so it's like, it's fun. I love that stuff a lot.
Yeah. So the medium started, was it like at blogspot.com? Like, was it one of the original blogs or was it a website?
Self-hosted WordPress. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. So so you're still doing WordPress. Do you do stuff on social media?
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram and X, Facebook mostly, LinkedIn also. Nothing else though. Threads we'll see.
How's your following on X?
Um, so I think I got 14,000 something followers.
That's big. That's big
I
on.
know. I mean, I try not to pay too much attention to that, but it's all about. I just try to push out stuff to engage. I want to talk about the market. I want to talk about interesting stuff. And so I'm like, I'm just hungry to talk about it. And so I push out stuff. It might be similar on every network. I have at least, one post a day on, all the networks. I can do more on X. So, it's hard on a Facebook page, just don't be pushing out too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instagram, I'm here for the conversation. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what made me think of that. Because if you're like doing long descriptions, I could see X being a great place to do conversations. And so we're at this conference where everybody's talking about social media, right? We talk about it a lot on here. We don't talk about X very often at all, but I could see that where you're going like deep conversations. As soon as you said that, I was like, I bet that does really, really well, because that's where people do want to go read and like dig in and think about what they're reading. Like Instagram and Facebook is very fast paced. So X is the closest to a blog, I think, the closest social media form to a blog.
I think that's fair. For housing, it's pretty toxic and negative sometimes. And I mean, just negative and toxic about almost anything.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit hard, but I'm just here for like mutual conversation. Hey, here's some stats and here's how I describe the market. And, so it gets a little weird sometimes, but that comes with territory.
Do you study markets other than Sacramento?
So I cover 11 counties of data in our local market. That's a pretty wide area, but, like next month, I'm speaking in Denver, and I'll be talking about the national market. And so at a conference, and so that's cool. That's exciting. But it's mostly like our region in Northern California. I speak usually somewhere once a week. This week is like 3 times, so it's a little too much. I overcommitted, but such is life, and having fun.
But you're here.
I'm here.
I mean, data is data, right? So like once you learn how to read the graphs, read the charts, know what you're looking for, then you can plug it in every city or county. I love using Redfin Data Center. They have this it's a great thing to like, once you learn how to read the graph, when I'm like, what market should I go into next? I can like type in a city and go like, oh yeah, this one actually has different months of inventory, or this one price. Like there are markets in the country right now where price is improving.
Yeah,
the prices are going up.
The Northeast is doing really well. Some portions of the Midwest.
Yeah.
Florida, Texas, different vibe. California's feeling a lot more.
Yeah. California was always like kind of like a market leader, where crashes would happen here before they would happen in Oregon. Rises would happen here in California before they'd happen in Oregon. It was kind of we were both here during the crash of like 08, 09, 2010, where we saw houses go from 700,000 to 200,000 in value. We saw, at the time I was choosing neighborhoods to buy based on what would get under 3 months of inventory. So I would like track, and so I'd choose zip codes, and I go, oh, this zip code just got under 3 months of inventory. I'm going to go buy a house there to flip it. And if a place like that was the one, if I was trying to figure out where is it safe to do the real estate business, months of inventory outweighed everything else.
I love that. I don't often hear investors tune into just like that metric, but I mean, that makes sense because it tells you about competition levels. I mean, you guys did a lot. It seemed like in the first time buyer price market, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it was because that's where the most foreclosures were, or if it was just because where those zip codes were, like, because a lot of the zip codes where they were like new construction in like 03, 04, 05.
Yeah.
So then when stuff got reset in 09, it just kind of worked out. Like they were, but it was a lot of first time buyer stuff.
For sure. And I think 2009 is when you started, right?
Yeah.
And so 84% of all sales were distressed in Sacramento County the first quarter of 2009. But you also had the federal tax credit come, and all of a sudden, like that injected some more demand in the market. And so it was kind of at the right time, not quite the bottom, but prices really didn't decline too much from 2009 to the bottom in 2012. And so
it's gradual.
Decline was 07 and 08, just hardcore, but not too much in 2009.
Yeah, that was our key with months of inventory too, because we knew the prices were still kind of going down every month. But if we bought a foreclosure at 60 cents and sold it at 90 cents, I wish now they would bring, because the government's talking about like, what can we do to help housing? Like the Fed rate increases dramatically impacted real estate more than anyone else. right? And especially on the commercial development side. Like now I do develop because it doesn't necessarily affect mortgage rates, but does a little bit. But it affects how much banks want to lend. It affects how eager they are to put stuff out there as rates went up there. And so I feel like real estate has been unfairly impacted. Now that might just be because I'm in real estate, but I don't know if other industries have been impacted. But when they talk about like the government right now, Trump, for example, is telling the Fed, "Hey, you should lower rates all the time. You should lower the Fed. You should lower the Fed." And I know the Fed has, and this is just us talking shop at this point, but it's this idea that like the Fed, nobody can really tell them what to do. But the government has other stuff they could do. Because back in 2010, 2011, yeah, it would say, hey, if you're going to buy a house for the first time, we'll give you $10,000, right? And it instantly made prices worth $10,000 more. There's things like that they could be doing, or extra subsidizing. There was a time you could do, honestly, I don't know how much you can do in seller credits right now in California, but I remember there was a time where you could do 6% seller credits. And then there was but that was like changed, right? Yeah. Like you couldn't always you couldn't always do FHA if it was a flip. And then they said like, let's do it so the stuff can actually sell now. Have you thought about any government intervention that could happen that's not rates?
Well, I mean, I think that there could be a release or some change with our local, building codes and the cost of permits. That's massive. You need to build more, but I think actually government probably needs to think about how to stimulate sellers, because we're in a really broken housing market. Sellers are not coming to the market at normal levels, and so after 3 years with down unaffordability. Locally, we're not even back to 2018 levels of supply, and which is crazy. That's more of a normal year. And so it hasn't allowed for prices to go down, the prices to soften very much. And so I think government ahead in years coming, they've got to recognize that the housing market's broken. What can they do? Maybe tax consequences, or think about capital gains. Like there's got to be some sort of incentive to help people list their homes and move on to the next step rather than keep them forever. And I think also government needs to think about foreclosure supply. And sometimes you have to just let the market do what it needs to do. And, there's all these moratoriums, which I don't want to sound callous. Like people are struggling. Delinquency rates are increasing. They're barely up. But like you got to let that stuff play out in the marketplace where foreclosures come to the market, for the sake of market health. And so if we hold all that stuff back, then we continue to have limited supply. And so I like the idea of government like trying to influence demand. That's Trump's whole thing. It's like a one-trick pony thing. Rates are going to go down. It's going to solve everything. I don't think that's true, because what if we got rates down and then mortgage rates go down? Well, then what? What if we stimulate the market with a bunch of demand and then we're like, there's still a supply problem? And so politicians, I think, really need to look at that. But I think also politicians are focused on like the big investors, and they're buying everything, which is not statistically true either. And so it's like sort of like you have to step away from the boogeyman issue and maybe focus on some other stuff. What affects the common person?
I got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you over that, but I want you to dig into that last part, the boogeyman effect of there's all the posts. Blackstone, BlackRock buying all the houses, taking this much super high percentages. And I know that part of the business because when I was buying foreclosure and got put out of business, they were buying everything. Now everything is like, in my mind, everything, right? But when people are saying like, hey, I mean, when I think of stats or no stats with that, this idea that there's way more people that own a single rental than most of the rental most of the rental housing is actually owned by individuals.
It's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did a map of Invitation Homes. They're the largest landlord in the country with over 80,000 units.
Owned by Blackstone. They were here in Sacramento as their second or third market in the country.
Absolutely. So locally, they own like 3,000 plus units. But I did this map of every single unit they own in California. And the thing went viral, but people would bring that up and they'd say, well, now do a map of other industrial owned properties. And like, I can only do so much.
Yeah.
But it is stunning to see where they own, but also you've got to back up and consider like, hey, there's other issues here. It's not just these guys, but we don't want big investment funds to sort of rinse and repeat and do this, umpteen times again over the next 50 to 100 years, because then they own more. And so, Wall Street invading Main Street, we have to like keep that in context, But yeah, it's fascinating. I've gotten a lot of media inquiries from that. And oftentimes it's like people want to hype up the story. I have a really balanced view. I'm like, hey, they're not the only show in town. We've got to address zoning issues, how to release supply, and how do we make it easier for first-time owner occupants or first-time buyers, and how do we incentivize that? What do we deal with how do we deal with our vacant properties? And like, I think there's a lot of things that people can focus on.
Yeah. So when you're saying it's really interesting to tackle the supply issue because a lot of people say, hey, we don't have enough houses, right? But when I think back economic supply demand, I'm like the supply issue, like, is it there aren't enough houses, or is it there aren't enough good houses, or is it there not enough houses that are nice enough for people want to be able to afford? Do you kind of understand the question? It's like somebody goes like, hey, they 4 years ago, they said, I can afford $1 million house. And they went and looked at them and they were really cool. And now rates change and now same payment, they can afford a $500,000 house. Right. And so is it really a supply issue of there aren't enough houses built, or is it the housing prices are too much? And I'm going to just add another thing to that question and just see what you think. So I don't know if I can ever sell my house in Austin, Texas, because I have a 2.8%, $3 million loan on it.
Yeah.
Right. My payment's like $12,000 or something on a $3 million house. If I sell that house today, so why don't I want to sell it? I don't want to live there anymore. I want to sell it. Right. But if I sell it and I go buy another house for $3 million, my payment's going to go to like $30,000. Right. So I guess two packages there. So the supply issue is kind of the first part. And then when you're saying incentivize sellers, is it that sort of an example?
Yeah, so I think my answer is yes. Like, the supply issue is a lot of different things where there's not enough homes being built. I think a lot of buyers today feel frustrated with the quality of homes out there. I think one of the things that we're seeing is that one group that has incentive to sell is when you inherit a home, it's crusty and old because mom or dad passed away, you put it on the market, and then the quality of condition just isn't there. And so buyers are hypersensitive about condition, price, location, and so that's a factor. But California is also a different vibe where you can look from articles from the 70s onward, at least they talk about a housing shortage. And so I think sometimes people will share graphs and be like, look, in the whole country, everything's like, well, great. But supply in Ohio or Alabama doesn't mean anything but California. And so there's places where there's been ample building, and that's not California. And so our population is outpaced. Like, we definitely need units of all different types, apartments and single family attached. And so, half plexes, duplexes.
Are sales prices going up here right now?
No, they're softening. And so we're down. Zillow's index for Sacramento down about 2.5% from 1 year ago. Traditional metrics down about 1%. Sometimes they're even. So definitely dipping, but not. It hasn't been this crash. It can't be this crash. Like in 2007, we had 11 months of supply in Sacramento County, but it's 2.5. In 2008, we had about 90,000 more listings than we do that now. And so it's like, no wonder why prices haven't been able to change quickly. And so that's that stuck vibe where, man, we've been at this for 3 years and I can't believe supply isn't past 2019. And meanwhile, the doom perspective is like, oh, we're all going to die. Check out this growth. And I'm like, yeah, we have 1,000 more listings this year. A lot of them are just sitting on the market, but like, we're still 1,200 below even a normal amount. And so it's unfortunate. The market feels broken right now. But yeah, it's healthy. I think it's very healthy for prices to go down. If I got to choose, I would 100% root for prices to go down so we can boost affordability. It's just a slow burn. It's hard to achieve that quickly in a market where we're not seeing this avalanche of listings.
It's fascinating to see what's going on here right now with 2.5 months of inventory. I would love it if you took some time looking at some Austin, Texas graphs.
Yeah.
And got some of your opinion on it. Yeah, because we had this giant, the whole reason I went to Texas, I was tired of the ups and downs of California, and I started investing in Texas in 2015 because I wanted stable and healthy. Yeah. Now when 2020, when prices went through the roof, I was very excited. I had a bunch of rentals. So it was like, oh, cool. I just wanted slow and steady. And I was really excited. But then now we have had this giant correction where we're still down, our median price, down 20 or 30% from what our peak price was there.
Yeah.
And we have 8-9 months of inventory in a lot of places. And it's this different sort of, I guess, so that goes to the idea that every city has their different challenges. right? Like one of the things that I've heard people say is we don't have a supply problem, we have a supply of nice houses problem. And so it really calls on like flippers that usually get the bad name to like kind of save the market, to go like, look, there's a bunch of crappy houses out there, like buy those, rehab them. Like, I don't know how many vacant houses there are. I'd be curious to start to look at that and go, how many like, I was driving through Jackson, Mississippi, and there's this neighborhood of like probably like 15 blocks where every house is vacant. And I remember the first time I drove through there, I was like, oh, the government at the time was like the governor. They had now the state owns them all, and they're like, we'll give them to you. And I was like, I can't go wrong if they give them to me. And I started looking at them like, I'll get killed if they give these to me. And I try to actually rehab it.
No, that's it. It's so wild when you look. Like sometimes I guess I'm a nerd, but I'll look at like Realtor.com, what's the lowest price house in the country. And it's crazy when you look at like Flint, Michigan, or you see like homes that are $2,500.
Yeah, literally. That's the listing price.
And it's yeah, it's wild. The market isn't the same everywhere, and that's it's wild. They used to do. The lowest I saw in Sacramento, I saw 5.
Yeah,
the worst side, but it had like 10K code enforcement. But I mean, seriously, like 15, 20K house.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's yeah, I see it seems like, so there was some moratoriums that I think have started to be lifted on like FHA, VA, but I also agree that when COVID happened, which was 5 years ago now, the fact that we still have to talk about it is there, but it has dramatically impacted foreclosures. One of my companies is, if someone's going to buy a foreclosure in Texas, so in California, there's Foreclosure Radar, Property Radar. That's the software for California and Nevada. My company is the software for Texas. Right? Yeah. I bought that company in 2017 when I started investing on it. It's called Roddy's Foreclosure Listing Service. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it Roddy? Does he have like that?
Yeah. Like, that was the guy's name that we took it from. We couldn't change the name. We bought it because it was but 256 counties. Postings are still on the wall.
Holy crap. There's 256 counties.
Yeah. And we go in and take pictures of the postings and then digitize it to where like out here, you can, in California, a lot of the stuff's like online and Property Radar could redo it. Well, anyway, when we see the stats of like defaults of like, so when COVID happened, foreclosures went to like moratorium, and then we are just now at pre-COVID levels of foreclosure, even though we have way more in default and way more like kind of stuff that should be in a correction status at the time. Like back in 2019, the price, like housing had gone up every year, no matter what. So the fact that we have less foreclosures now than we did there is fascinating. I think I like your point of this idea that like what could really fix the system is actually just even like what happened in 08, 09, 07, 08, 09 was like catastrophic. And it was like, and when it happened, nobody knew what to do. They hadn't done it before. And I think that's what they were trying to prevent. And then it's also like bad foreclosures have this really bad name. But I think you're right that like letting the market do its thing, if somebody can't pay their bill and they don't get foreclosed on a house, like something has to incentivize me to sell my house in Texas. Now there are things that do that for me to want to do it, because I'm like, why can I do that? Like I'm stuck here. Like I'm stuck in this house for this payment, but like people get divorced, people have things, people move for jobs, like people sell, but like figuring out what actually, and so there's going to be cases, I guess my case is extreme. There's going to be cases where people are behind, they've been behind for a while, and they have them listed on the market. But if they actually knew there was going to be a foreclosure or something, it would start to change the prices around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one piece of the pie. It's hard to have that conversation publicly, because then let people be like, "Wow, you're really callous," and no, that's not vindictive. When people struggle, sometimes like you got to go through the struggle, and there's hope at the end of the journey. But a lot of people that got foreclosed on in the past, they ended up being in a much better position in the future. And, we can't control that. But yeah, I mean, you see delinquencies all going in the wrong direction with student loans and cars and stuff, but it just hasn't translated to distressed activity in the marketplace. I think there's just so much incentive for people to hold on, especially if they bought, 2014, they have a ton of equity, they refi in 2020. And, their mortgage payment is lower than actual rent. Like there is strong incentives to try to hang on. In Sacramento, about half of 1% of sales are distressed, half of 1% of a very small number of sales. And so it's just, I think when
It's a non-existent market.
practically, but I do think that like we've seen prices dip a little. We're down a little from mid 2022. Like there's definitely properties that are coming to the market as those sellers sell out. Like 5% of listings right now, or when sellers who bought in 2021, and there's going to be some percentage of those who are underwater. They just don't officially get categorized as short stack, but it's still like it's still slunk a bit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, housing is such an emotional topic that it's really easy to kind of look at it from a technical perspective. I mean, and I saw it firsthand, the deep in foreclosure crisis, but it's like, we can get technical and go like, no, this is what could actually fix the system. But then which is a very economic, analytical, and like it works, economics works, supply demand works. Like that stuff is just, it's unarguable. But because there's such this emotional component, it's like, it's not a true free market system.
Yeah, I think the older I get, the more I work in real estate, you just see the effect of policy, And I think a simplistic view of real estate, you're like supply and demand. Okay, yeah, there's that, but you can see how governmental programs with financing decisions that are made about, how people can transact, how many properties you can own, and it just, the system creates the results.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's going to be a wild year. My last question. I mean, you and I could chat for a while. I want to have you back on the podcast a different time, maybe just looking at graphs. And I know that and even the talk you just had was kind of this whole idea that, man, I have felt in the last couple of years, this idea that like, so we're on here telling you how to get better at real estate and how to solve the problem during these tough times and like how to do volume and things like that. But like, it is also worth acknowledging, like, it is a tough, lonely, difficult time for people. And like, sometimes maybe the solution to getting better at that is like phoning a friend and like reaching out and remembering, like, I would ask you two things. One, an easy question. What do you think is going to happen with interest rates over the next year? Just whatever your wild ass guess. And then two, your final thoughts about advice for people, which isn't real estate related, which is more about your talk.
Yeah. So I don't predict rates. I think almost everyone has gotten wrong the last 3 years. And even this week, the Fed's cutting. I just talked to the news station yesterday and like, hey, this is great for buyers. And then mortgage
rates went up, yeah.
Just like last time. So what do I think is the Fed going to cut? It looks like they're poised to cut ahead. A lot of members of the Fed board think that will happen. But what happens with inflation data, if that keeps going up, then that takes away sort of, can they cut or not? And so I still feel like there's a lot of uncertainty. It's not a shoe-in that automatically that the Fed will cut, mortgage rates follow. That would help buyer demand, but I don't know. I mean, I think that we're continually surprised. But yeah, my talk today was about friendship. It felt a little vulnerable talking about that, but I think that when the market gets tough in real estate, it reminds me personally what I want to focus on in my life is I want to cultivate lasting relationships. I've got the business part down, and that's fine. I got a huge network, but man, I'm after this year, and last year, my word of the year was just relationship, where I find myself just so intent to pour myself into relationships with people and to connect. And I mean, that's what I'm really excited about in life right now, really. And I'm going for it, man. I'm all in.
You're all in on building friendships, building relationships.
I'm all in, and I'm having fun.
Yeah, during a time that should be that a lot of people are struggling. Yeah. I love it. All right, I'm going to have you back on the podcast another time. But for people listening right now, how can they go follow you more? So, like, your best spots, either your website or X or all of them. Where's the place they can find you?
Both SacramentoBladeblog.com. Otherwise, I'm SacraCrazy on Instagram and X. Easy to find other places. Not on TikTok. I don't dance. So.
Yeah, cool. Ryan, this was a fun conversation. It's so good to get to chat with you. 10 years longer than that after just random emails and things like that years ago. So thanks for coming on the show. As always, Real Estate Rockstars. Thanks for listening.